Hello. Hello. Hey everyone, welcome back to Museum of the Bible. My name is Jeff and we're here starting to get things a little bit together for hopefully a reopening in the next few weeks. In the meantime, we're starting to get some of the books reopened, the coverings taken off in hopes that we can welcome you back soon. But today I'm here on our History of the Bible floor, and I'm excited to tell you about a very important printed Greek New Testament. In fact, probably the most important printed Greek New Testament ever made, by a scholar named Erasmus of Rotterdam in the year 1516. Now let me give you a little bit of background. In the early 1500s, late 1400s, most scholars and churchmen, church people in Europe didn't know Greek. They used the Latin Bible exclusively. They spoke, a vernacular language, Dutch or German, whatever. But Greek wasn't used even among academics primarily. And so their copies were in Latin, their copies of the Bible. But there was also a movement going on, called humanism, to go back to the sources, to go back to the earliest sources possible for manuscripts, for texts, and for languages. And so scholars started to learn Greek, they started to learn Hebrew, and there was a desire to have a Greek New Testament for distribution by print so that many people could access the earliest sources in Greek. There's a group of Catholic scholars in Spain at the University of Alcalá that started a project in 1510 to produce not only the New Testament, but the entire Bible in Greek and Hebrew and Latin and all kinds of parallel columns. That starts in 1510, but it isn't released until 1520 or even 1522 in most cases. Erasmus of Rotterdam and a publisher named Froben in Basel, Switzerland, decided that they would try to almost get first to market, to get an edition out so that it could be distributed broadly pretty quickly. And Erasmus, who at this time in 1515 was a professor at Cambridge University, was contacted by this publisher who said, I'll pay you as much as anybody else if you come to Basel and produce a Greek text. Now, Erasmus had been working on this for some time, and he had also been working on a new Latin translation because he realized, based on his work with the Greek, that the Latin wasn't always entirely, one-to-one with the Greek. There could be some improvements. So he came to Basel, and actually in pretty short order, in just a few months after arrival, they started printing, this 1516 copy of the New Testament. If you look at it closely, it looks very much like Greek or Latin manuscripts would have looked from the 15th century. The Greek, you see, doesn't have chapters, it doesn't have verses. Verses did not exist yet. That doesn't come till later. And the Greek letters are written in this cursive script, minuscule. And you notice it's very complex. There are only 24 letters in the Greek alphabet, but to produce all the letter forms that are used in Greek manuscripts, they needed about 200 different characters for the typeset. So it's a very complicated process. And of course, the publisher and his team didn't know Greek, and unfortunately, there's a large number of errors and typos in this edition of 1516. He'll fix those later on. 3 years later, he produces the second edition in 1519. And you can see again, you have the Greek, you have the Latin on the right. And what's really important about the 1519 edition is this is the edition that's used by Luther for his 1522 translation. It's used by William Tyndale for his 1525 translation. And that then becomes the basis for the King James, of course, and subsequent translations. So this edition, this 1519 edition, is essentially the Greek text that was the basis for every vernacular translation, English or other European languages, really until the late 19th century. What we have here is a 1551 edition of Erasmus's text. Now keep in mind there's no copyright at this time. Anybody could take a text and print it on their own and sell it. And so this edition of Erasmus's text is printed by a man named Stephanus, or Robert Estienne. Stephanus is his Latin name. He's working in Geneva. And what's important about this edition, if you look closely, you will actually see, this is open to Hebrews here, you will see numbers in the center column. If you can kind of see that, if I can get my finger. Oh, look at that. You can see numbers down the center column. 37, 38, 39. This is the first Bible to have verse divisions. Prior to this time, you could only refer to, Hebrews 5. And now you could refer to Hebrews 5:37. And so now we see the divisions that continue pretty much unchanged into the King James and down into our modern day. And you notice this creates a little different experience. The way the verses are laid out, and again, let me stick my finger, you see that there's essentially a paragraph for each verse, which changes the reading dynamic. Rather than reading an entire text at a time or a paragraph at a time, now it's kind of split up into a verse at a time, which is a different way to refer to the biblical text. And of course, you start to see scholars and teachers and preachers refer to it that way very soon afterward. Well, I hope you get a chance to come and take a look at these yourself someday here at Museum of the Bible. Take care, everyone.